Welcome to the 2025 Charles K. Atkin Distinguished Speaker Series. I am Mandy Holmstrom. I am serving as interim chair while our beloved chair Mo is on sabbatical and is hiding in the back right now. Hello, Mo. And everyone's like, Mo. There's Chuck. We're going to talk about Chuck a little bit, to whom this, I know, it's like, oh, that's Chuck right there. So we cannot have a talk typically about somebody like Chuck without the map, which, the high quality map that I borrowed from Mo. So Chuck, he was born in Washington, D.C. in 1945, and he spent his early years in Michigan and other parts of Michigan like Sault Ste. Marie. In fourth grade, he moved to East Lansing, and he pretty much stayed there for the rest of his life, except for a brief stint to Madison to earn his PhD. But by the time he was 25 years old, he came back to become a faculty member in our department, which just blows my mind. 25 years old. And he was a faculty member and then the chair of our department for the 15 years before he passed away in 2012. So a little bit more about Chuck, if you don't already know, or if you need a refresher. He was a preeminent scholar of mass media. In particular, he studied the design and evaluation of persuasive campaigns related to health and safety. He was the recipient of the most prestigious honors on campus, including the University Distinguished Professorship. He was an ICA fellow and the winner of many ICA and NCA awards, an award for distinguished service from the National Commission on Drunk Driving, and a Decade of Behavior Research award from the American Psychological Association. He testified and consulted to subcommittees of the Senate, House of Representatives, presidential White House commissions, Surgeon General, and other federal and state agencies in the U.S. and government agencies of Canada, Ecuador, Egypt, England, and Germany. He wrote over 10 books, over 150 articles, and secured funding from multiple agencies and foundations. So a very prolific and impactful scholar. But Chuck was also a humble and kind man, very funny as well, and he was so supportive of all he worked with. I was fortunate enough to be hired by Chuck myself and be mentored by him during the early years of my career. One thing about Chuck you might not know, is that he loved French fries, but I never saw him actually order French fries. He just, would borrow one or two from your plate. But he also gifted French fry vouchers to graduate students. And I'm not sure for what. Was it papers at conferences or top papers or whatever, right? Whatever accolades the students had, he would gift them with free fries. So I know that Chuck loved fries. Of course, Chuck was beloved by us, his colleagues. And how apt that Sandy Smith is walking in the room right now. Here she is. He was loved and he loved and was beloved by Dr. Sandy Smith, who has just entered the room so wonderfully. His children, his grandchildren, other family members and friends. He was also a dog dad to many Australian shepherds over the years, along with Sandy, a dog mom. Oh, I don't want to go on from that picture. So I am so pleased that you are all here today, and we have three fantastic speakers to honor the legacy of Charles Atkin with our Atkin Speaker Series. And to introduce our first speaker, I am going to introduce Yutong to introduce our first speaker. So Yutong, please.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to thank Mandy for her wonderful speech. And then I wanted to, again, welcome everyone to the Communication Department's 5th Annual Charles Atkin Distinguished Speaker Series. On behalf of the department's colloquium committee, it is my great honor to introduce our first speaker today, Dr. Soo-yeon Shin. Dr. Shin is an associate professor in the Department of Communication at Seoul National University in South Korea and also an MSU alum. She got her PhD in communication here in 2017 and is a former faculty member at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Dr. Shin has provided a number of incredible contributions in the field of computer-mediated and interpersonal communication. For example, her paper in the Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication investigates the effects of self-viewing in video chat during work conversations. Her work in communication research examines the role of justification on cooperative management of online user comments. And her recent research was funded by Samsung Electronics, further showing the practical impact of her research. So Dr. Shin's recent research focuses on how AI-mediated communication can reduce conflicts. Today, Dr. Shin will be presenting her work on how AI can contribute to civil online discussion. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Shin.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. It's such an honor for me to be here and speak at this Atkin series. I still remember the old days that I was one of the audience listening to the wonderful talks. And actually, one of the research he introduced today about me was inspired by one of the talks at this series. So I hope that my research talk today could be just a little bit of that spark of inspiration for you, and it would be a great honor if I could do that today. Today, I'd like to introduce 3 studies I recently did with my amazing students at Seoul National University about how or whether AIMC can help us achieve more civil and positive online discussion. And this research was kindly funded by Samsung Electronics. So we all encounter a lot of hostile, aggressive, and negative online communication in online discussion. And we know that it's pervasive and harmful. Pew research done in the United States told that many adults in the US experience hostile exchanges online. They see a lot of aggressive language and emotional attacks, name calling, those kind of things. And in Korea, which was the place where the first 2 studies I'm going to introduce today was conducted. More than 50% of the respondents in a national survey done by government reported that they encounter online hate expression in discussion forums. So it's very pervasive phenomenon across a lot of nations. And research told us that there's a lot of negative consequences. Some of them reported that people who were exposed to that kind of uncivil or impolite or negative hostile discussion experience themselves really heightened negative emotions such as anger and anxiety and disgust. And also, a lot of them reported having lower willingness to participate in online discussions themselves, which creates another issue that, okay, they're not going to voice their opinions because this is a hostile place. And also, maybe most problematic part is this: people who are exposed to that kind of negative, hostile online discussion actually showed more likelihood of engaging themselves in that negative and hostile, aggressive online behavior. So this is an escalation cycle of negativity. So negativity exposure breeds more negativity. So we need to tackle this issue, but how? And of course, a lot of discussion forums, especially where the conflictual issues, the discussion on that is going on, acknowledge this issue, and they have been trying to resolve these issues. And those approaches can be categorized as 2 like this. So the first is reducing the anonymity by providing some kind of information about the online discussion users. But we know that this may not solve all the problem, and research finding also shows that. We know that even on social media, for example, where all their identity is exposed, a lot of people engage in that kind of negative and hostile discussion. So this is not the best solution. And then more importantly, it undermines the free expression. So for example, especially for politically diverse or very sensitive topics, people will be a little afraid to talk about it in a very honest and truthful way. But then by including this kind of element, it decreases the motivation to engage in voicing their true opinions. And then it also reduces the perceived protection. So another way to go about this issue is to use the moderators. So a lot of online discussion forums have that human moderators or automated moderators. But these have issues. For example, there's an issue of scalability, especially regarding the human moderators, though they might have better judgments about what to ban, what to delete, what to stay, but they can handle that massive volume of the comments and posts that's being uploaded every day and every second. And then a lot of them can be reactive rather than proactive. For example, the harms can be already been done because that negative and hostile comment, it has been already uploaded and exposed to a lot of people. But after someone flags that or reports that, it's being banned or it's being deleted. So it's reactive. And for the automated moderators, some people raise the issue of censorship. So who's to make that standard? And is that the automated AI moderators are really having the good standard to distinguish what to stay and what to ban? So there's always that accusation of bias. So there's a gap in this kind of existing approaches to tackle this issue. So we need more proactive and scalable solutions that promote positive and constructive online communication while preserving human agency. So it's not that AI being the decision maker or the other human beings being the decision maker, but what if we can promote people's better action by using AI? So that was our approach. So we wanted to focus on the idea of AI-mediated communication. So AI-mediated communication was proposed by the Hancock et al. 2020. So this is an AI systems that facilitate or mediate human communication. So here, the AI provides corrections, analysis, or feedback to help users achieve communication goals. And a lot of AIMC research that has been done today focus on non-conflictual settings. For example, how to promote them better, how to appear more attractive or more employable. But I thought that this could be a really wonderful perspective to take to resolve this issue of online negative behaviors. So we call them as AI-mediated self-moderation approach. So here we wanted to encourage users to make their comments more positive and civil, and then by reducing the aggressive and conflictual language, still maintaining their autonomy in the process. Okay, so this is, maybe I could do it here. Yes, it works now. So the first two studies I'm going to present test this idea. So the first study was an experimental study that wanted to answer these two focal questions. Does AI sentiment score feedback increase comment revision voluntarily? And what is the role of AI score magnitude and pre-existing AI attitudes? And then the second study that was done based off of the study one was to answer these two focal questions. Do third-party observers in online discussion perceive the effects of the AI-mediated communication and impacts on perceptions of individual comments and overall discussion quality? So let me talk more about the theoretical framework that I was based on. So we focused on the feedback intervention theory. So the key intervention of this theory is this. So not all feedback works great. So these researchers who proposed this idea did a large-scale meta-analysis and found out 1/3 of the feedback actually backfires or ineffective, and what's the reason? They found out that the feedback works when it directs the attention to the task, for example, how to improve. Rather than not the self. So I'm not worthy, I'm selfless, I'm very, I don't have the ability to do that kind of thing, so self-image. And one of the best ways to achieve that, directing the attention to the task, not the self, is to provide a clear performance and standard gap. So by showing that, okay, this is the standard and then your current performance is like this, it can provide that motivation to improve their performance better. So it can facilitate that task motivation and further improvement in their performance. So we thought that, okay, how can we provide that clear performance standard gap? We could use AI score. So score-based feedback advantages are like this. So first, it provides very explicit and measurable gap. So you can clearly see that what your common score is compared to the maximum or minimum level of that scale. And then secondly, it preserves user autonomy. So for example, you see that your performance is below this maximum score or close to minimum score, but then you can decide whether to revise your comment and how to revise. So your human agency is totally maximized in that process. And third, it's individualized and immediate feedback. So the research on the feedback effects reported findings that a lot of times individualized feedback works much better than general feedback. And then also, especially for short-term tasks like writing an online comment like this, immediate feedback right after the performance works better than delayed feedback. So the AI score feedback can achieve these kind of advantages. So based on the theoretical framework, we developed these set of hypotheses. So first set of hypotheses related to the effects of AI score feedback provision itself. So the first hypothesis is that those who receive AI score feedback compared to those who did not receive the AI score feedback, just a general feedback, will have higher likelihood of revision. So they are going to engage in the revision more. And the second, those who receive the AI score compared to those who did not receive AI score will have more sentiment improvement in their comments. And then the second set of hypotheses related to the AI score magnitude. Among those who received the AI score, we expected that people who receive lower score will have higher revision likelihood and also higher sentiment change. So this is related to not just the feedback intervention theory about that specific performance and standard gap, but it's also related to the other, the feedback and then self-regulation research that tells us that when people realize that there's a larger gap, that actually motivates them to work harder to achieve the goal. So that's related to that. And then the third set of hypotheses is related to the moderation, potential moderation by pre-existing AI favorability. So those who have already some favorable attitude about the AI use in our society, maybe they are more responsive to the AI feedback suggestion compared to those who have unfavorable attitude toward the AI. So the first study was done by 2x2 between subjects online experiment. So the first variable we manipulated was the feedback. So there was AI score feedback versus no AI score feedback. And the second variable was related to the generalization purpose. So people who saw that discussion boards, they either saw the majority in that discussion being positive toward the issue being discussed or negative toward the issue being discussed. The issue we chose was a contentious issue in South Korea. It still is. So this is related to the no-kid zone policy. I don't know how many of you have heard this policy. It's that it's a policy of the store owners, such as restaurants or cafes. They are prohibiting young kids to enter their store because they are worried that they might be too loud and disrupt other customers. So of course you can see there's a huge issue of discrimination, but a lot of people actually agree with the store owners because some of the events related to kids being too disruptive have been reported in the media a lot of times. So a lot of people agree with the store owners' rights, and some of them, of course, argue against the idea of protecting the children's rights and parents' rights. So it's a contentious issue like that. Participants were Korean adults, 422, and then mean age was about 40, and then the male and female distribution was similar. So this is a procedure of the experiment. So this is the discussion forum they looked at. So they first read the discussion post opposing their view. So when they enter our experimental website, we first ask, what's your opinion, what's your attitude toward the no-key zone policy, and to create that conflictual online discussion so that they can be more realistic and they are more emotionally charged. So we actually assign them to be viewing the opposing majority to the issue being discussed. So for example, if you are in favor of the no-key zone policy, you are going to see the online discussion where the majority is against that idea, okay, and vice versa. And then after seeing all that, there's a post and there's 10 comments of other users, and then there's a box where you can put your own comments. So you write a comment in response, and immediately after you write your comment, you are going to receive the feedback. So I'm going to show you what exactly it looks like, but in no AI condition, just general revision suggestion, the type you typically see in a lot of online discussion forums. So be constructive, be positive, to help others, that kind of thing. And then AI condition, in addition to that general suggestion, you are going to see the real-time AI sentiment score feedback. And then you can choose to revise or not. If you choose to revise, you are going to be redirected to the box and the discussion board, and then you can edit your comment and resubmit. If you choose not to revise, then you are going to be just submitting your original initial comments. So this looked like this. So this is actually from the one of the real comments our participants made. So it's a little small, but it basically tells that, is this cafe your damn living room? You can just decide what you don't like, then stay home alone. Why the heck even come out? Those kind of things. So after you write their comment, this is the general feedback. It tells us, okay, so try to make it more positive, the sound more positive in tone, because it can help more, people feel less tension, and it can create more constructive discussion atmosphere. And you can choose those two buttons. And this is the AI feedback condition. In addition to that, you're going to see the AI score. So in this kind of situation, the person received -0.7. So we used the Google Natural Language API, and it ranged from -1, very negative, to +1, very positive, and then it increases in 0.1 units. And it's a real-time individualized analysis, and just for more visual distinction, it was color-coded, and then the explanatory notes was added for that specific score they received. So it tells us that the negative score, it means that there's a lot of negative emotion going on in your comment, and the positive score means there's a lot of positive emotion going on in your comments. And then the dependent variables were straightforward. So it's a binary dependent variable about revision decision. So if someone chose revise and actually revised their comment, which is different from their initial comment, then we record it as 1. And then if the person chose not to revise, or even they chose revise button, but then didn't change anything in their comment, then they were recorded as 0. And then sentiment change was calculated by using the Google Natural API again, and the revised score minus original score, so how their sentiment improved. And moderator was pre-existing AI favorability from Chapman and Broadway, 20 items, which asks general attitude about AI. So for example, AI is beneficial for our society, or AI makes a lot of errors, AI takes our job away, so those kind of very general attitude. And covariates were checked, pre-existing issue attitude, involvement, demographics, and then those significant differences emerged across experimental conditions, so it's evenly distributed, so no covariates were included. So this is the result of the first study, which was analyzed using the logistic regression and linear regression. So the first hypothesis was supported. So if you see that, the odds ratio, if people receive the AI score, their odds ratio was 1.63, which means AI score provision increased revision likelihood by 63%, okay, which is a substantial increase. And second, AI score provision didn't actually affect the sentiment change. Okay, so this is also difference between the H1 and H2. The action to revise and then the actual quality of the revision differs. Okay, and then third, a lower score, those who received lower score revised more, which was supported. And then people who received lower score made more sentiment change, which was again supported. And then fifth and sixth hypothesis about the possibility of AI favorability moderation was not supported. So it means that the key finding is AI score increased revision likelihoods by 63% regardless of AI attitudes. So this is a quick summary of the findings. AI score feedback, more people revised, lower scores, stronger motivation to improve, which was appearing in both the revision frequency and then revision quality. Feedback type doesn't affect revision quality, okay? And works equally well across AI attitudes, so this is a pretty robust effect. So I'm going to introduce study 2 findings first before I discuss the full general discussion about the implications of this finding. So after doing this, I still had that remaining question. So does this effect extend to third-party observers? Because as we know that in online discussion forums, a majority of the users are just the observers who are not actively participating in the discussion. So maybe this AI-mediated feedback is helping the self-moderation of the active users, but what about the others? Okay? So the study 2 rationale was this. We need to study the third-party observers. So vast majority of the online users are lurkers, so-called, who just observe things. And then previous research tells us that their issue attitudes about the conflictual issues are often shaped through the observation of online discussions. So what they observe in the online discussion, how people think about it really matters for shaping their attitudes toward the issue. And another interesting thing is that perceived conflict of online discussion has negative consequences, such as lower expectations about public's constructive deliberation. What it means is that if you see in online, a lot of people are fighting over an issue, then that actually decreases your idea of that people having ability to discuss freely and democratically to resolve that social issue. Okay, so this is a very general extended effect. Okay, so we wanted to do some critical tests for real-world effectiveness. Can observers detect differences between original and revised comments? And can individual comment revision influence the overall discussion perceptions, for example, such as the overall conflict strength of that online discussion? So study 2 research questions. So one set of that is related to comment level evaluation, and another set of research questions is related to overall discussion level evaluation. So the first research question is, are revised comments perceived as more positive by the third-party observers who don't know anything about the revision or who don't know anything about the intervention? And RQ2 was, does feedback time moderate this effect? So for example, if the revision was prompted by AI, does that make additionally beneficial effects? Okay? And overall discussion level evaluation, the third research question was, do revised comments reduce perceived conflict in the overall discussion? And RQ4 was, does feedback time moderate this effect? So study 2 method was survey. So we recruited 348 new participants in South Korea who hadn't participated in study 1. And then demographics were pretty similar to the first study. And observers evaluated comments from study 1. So from study 1, we took 87 original and revised version of it. So each participant in the study 2 evaluates one comment embedded in the online discussion. Okay? So 11 comments in total. If you remember, in the first study, the stimulus looked like a post and 10 comments. So these participants from the study 1's comment is included as the last comment in the discussion stimulus. Okay? And observers were blind to the feedback intervention. They didn't know about the revision, didn't know about whether there was any kind of intervention about the revision. And the measures, we asked them to assess the comment sentiment, negativity, positivity. And we also asked them to assess the perceived conflict strength of overall discussion. So how much tension was going on, how much anger was going on, that kind of thing. And this is the results for study 2. So first, regarding the comment sentiment. So people who saw the revised comments rated the comments as more positive compared to those who saw the original comments. So this is a very important finding because it means that if we can motivate people to revise their original comment, it can actually make a real-world impact to the third-party observers who didn't know about the revision process. And then RQ2 feedback type moderation, there is no interaction effect, means that once we can motivate people to revise in any other way, then it will be impactful for sentiment improvement, but whether it is prompted by AI or whether it being prompted by general feedback doesn't matter, okay? So that's the effect about the sentiment. And about the overall discussion quality, we didn't find the main effect of revision on the perceived conflict of the overall discussion. But interestingly, we found that the feedback time moderation occurred for this overall discussion conflict strength. So this is the interaction plot for this. So there's the x-axis is the original and revised, and then blue line is the AI score feedback, and red line is the no AI score feedback. So if you see that blue line, it decreases when it becomes revised. The y-axis is the perceived conflict strength. The lower, the better. So AI score feedback, in that condition, people who saw the revised comment in the discussion so that, okay, this whole conversation is less angry, less tense, okay, there's less conflict. But there was no kind of, not that kind of difference in the no AI feedback. There was no difference. So the key findings of this study 2 is this. First, observers could detect sentiment improvements in revised comments. So revision really matters. But feedback type did not matter for sentiment improvements. Okay, so how many people can we make them revise voluntarily really matters. Okay, but if you remember the study 1, AI feedback was definitely substantially better at motivating people to revise their own comments. Okay? But only AI-prompted revisions reduce overall perceived conflict. So let me talk about what it means and how we can interpret these findings in the next slide. But some notable things here is that this effect, especially the overall conflict strength reduction effect, emerged with only one revised comment among 11. Okay? So if you think about it, if we can motivate people to, at least one person in that huge conversation, to change their action, it can actually make a difference in the overall discussion quality. So it suggests a scalable impact of AI-mediated self-moderation. What if we can motivate 2? What if we can motivate 3? Okay, maybe it will be more impactful as we can involve more people to revise. So some general discussion for study 1 and study 2. So first, we can see that feedback intervention theory being validated for AAMC in online discussion context. So AI score provision improved the revision likelihood. So it seems like the clear, explicit performance standard gap AI score provided was able to raise their attention to the task level motivation. So I like to increase the score. Okay? And secondly, the larger discrepancies between the standard and performance made them respond in more strongly. So the lower AI scores, there were higher revision rates and greater sentiment improvement. So it's consistent with the self-regulation research, which tells that larger gaps between the standard and performance makes people to work harder. And this also means practically those who need moderation most, those who are writing most negative comments are appropriately targeted by this AI intervention because they are working harder to improve. And third, there was no difference in revision quality, the sentiment improvement between feedback type. So how can we interpret this finding? AI score versus general feedback produced similar sentiment improvements among revisers. So among those who received the AI score, there could be some kind of different reactions like this depending on the AI score magnitude they received. Maybe those who received the higher score in the scale, they thought that, okay, I have nothing to improve. My comment is already perfect and positive and civil, so there could be some ceiling effect. Or maybe there's some good enough problem. Even those who receive some moderate score in the scale, they may be just viewing their score as, okay, it's good enough. Okay? And this actually creates some kind of issue if we acknowledge that AI is not perfect, right? So what if the AI score is being biased or erroneous in a certain way? This can give people that justification that, okay, my comment is good enough. Okay, I thought that this could be a little problematic, but then AI says so I'm going to accept it as it is, and then I'm not going to improve further. So this kind of an issue have some implication that maybe that single metric provided by AI may not be sufficient for all users, all variety of users who need who can work better, who can perform better by giving this kind of AI justification. And our research, the first findings were robust across different AI attitudes. So why didn't AI favorability moderate defects? Even though the persuasion literature tells us that if you are more favorable toward the source of the persuasion message, you are going to respond more favorably toward that message. So we can interpret it in some different perspectives. So first, from the elaboration likelihood model perspective, so remember the situation is that you are being the minority in that discussion, right? So you are arguing, you are defending your position against the majority about an issue. So maybe that kind of minority situation may have made people to be more involved in that process. So highly involved in this situation could have made them focus more on the feedback message quality rather than where it's coming from. So maybe the source effect could have been reduced. And another way to think about this is the pro-social framing. So in our study, the AI was positioned as tool for constructive and positive discussion. And maybe that pro-social framing of the AI could have reduced that psychological reactance, especially for those who have unfavorable attitude toward the AI. So practical significance is pretty straightforward, regardless of what kind of theoretical perspective might be more appropriate here. Is that intervention like this, it could be effective regardless of users' AI attitudes, because it's a very important practical implication, because a lot of platforms, they worry that what if we include this kind of new AI system, will all the users be favorable toward that kind of change? At least in this study, a lot of participants responded to this AI intervention favorably, and they were responsive to it regardless of their pre-existing AI attitudes. So this is a good news for the platform. And another thing to note is extended benefits to third-party observers. So in the second study, observers perceived revised comments as more positive. And then another thing is AI feedback's unique downstream effect. So only AI prompted revisions reduce overall discussion conflicts. So this means that maybe AI feedback may facilitate improvements in linguistic features beyond sentiment valence. So for example, remember that there was no effect of the feedback type in the sentiment improvement, right? So what does it mean? Maybe there's something more than sentiment valence. Maybe people who receive that lower AI score could have changed the formality or politeness or some other ways to improve the quality, improve the tone. So that was not detected by the sentiment scale. So maybe we can look further into this kind of matter. What kind of things people do, what kind of strategies people used to incorporate the AI feedback. So from study 1 and study 2, we learned a lot of things, but there was still, some people who didn't follow the AI suggestion and wanted to know why. Okay, so we included the open-ended question. Okay, why didn't you listen to AI? So there were some interesting ideas, but some of them just say that I just didn't like to be ordered by AI. What do they know? But there were some interesting findings that commonly emerged. Was that I wanted to correct, but I didn't know how to do it. Okay, so there was this issue of tension between the autonomy and lack of support, right? We thought that when we started this project, okay, human agency really matters. We want to give them the maximum autonomy about how to revise, whether to revise. But then some of them are saying that, okay, I wanted to revise, but don't know how. Okay, how can we resolve that issue then? So study one approach was score only, maximum autonomy, users decide how to revise. Advantage was, of course, user agency is preserved, maximize, limitation, like revision strategies. So the central question here was, can we provide actionable guidance without compromising user autonomy? So can we provide some kind of example to follow? And then they can decide whether they can follow the example or edit the example, or just not to follow the example and act as they want. So theoretical background was similar to the previous study, but here we wanted to use generative AI like ChatGPT as a solution to provide that actionable guidance. So from the feedback intervention theory before, specific feedback we know that is more effective than general guidance. So ChatGPT can provide concrete revision examples. So in a way, it combines the sentiment analysis, which is the goal to achieve the performance standard gap. And then not only that, it can provide the pathway to achieve the goal, the clear text example. And then secondly, the self-efficacy literature tells us that clear pathways tend to facilitate action. So for example, some studies show that explicit example feedback improves self-efficacy. So if you see that some other person completes that task and then shows how to do it, it actually increases the self-efficacy of other people who are going to tackle the same task. So, and then a lot of studies show that if you have more self-efficacy, it tends to increase the performance. So if you lack the self-efficacy, maybe which was the case for those who didn't know what to do, didn't know how to correct, maybe if we can provide the actionable guidance, we can increase their performance. So based on these ideas, we developed some hypotheses and research questions. So the main effects of AI example feedback versus AI score-only feedback was this. So those who received AI example feedback generated by the generative AI will have higher revision likelihood. And then second hypothesis is those who receive example feedback versus AI score-only feedback will have higher sentiment improvement. And then we also wanted to test again the AI attitudes, which was this time not the hypothesis but research question based on our previous study. We know that, okay, it's not for sure that AI attitudes will be really moderating factor for this effect of AI feedback type. So third study was done in online, and then we recruited US adults from the Amazon Turk. So this was 2 by 2 by 2 between subject design. So the first variable is the key variable, the feedback type. So we provided AI example feedback or AI score feedback. And then we also had two different topics for generalization purpose, the gun control versus race bending in media. And then two generalization factor, which was the post tense, favorable toward the issue being discussed or unfavorable toward the issue being discussed. And just like before, they were put into the situation to defend themselves. And 434 US adults were collected, and then 63% of them was male, and mean age was 35. And one of the discussion posts they looked at looked like this. This was about the gun control. So after you read that post and then write your own comment, you're going to receive a feedback like this. So this is a ChatGPT feedback. So if you are in the AI score feedback, it's the same as before. You receive the first, your comment, and then the AI score, which is the same as before. And then if you are in the ChatGPT situation, the AI example situation, then you're going to receive the additional third panel. So here is the revision suggestion from AI. Would you like to use this suggestion as your comment? And then we tested a lot of prompts so that this prompt will not modify the stance, the attitude of that comment, just improve the tone to be more civil and polite. And then you can decide, okay, I will revise or I will not revise. And then we made explicitly that you can further add your comment after accepting the AI revision suggestion. So if you click that I like to revise, you are going to be redirected to the previous page to write your comment. And then you're going to see the ChatGPT suggestion, and then you can edit it there. So this is the results. So first hypothesis was strongly supported. So if you see the odds ratio, it's huge. So if you receive AI example versus just AI score, more people revised. And second, AI example did not improve the sentiment further. Okay, this keeps appearing from the previous study. Okay, and there was a replication success. So the consistent pattern emerged for both topics, gun control, race spending, and consistent across discussion post stances. So there was no interaction based on the topic or discussion post stance. The interesting, significant interaction emerged about the revision likelihood about the AI attitude and feedback type, though. So remember in previous study about whether it being AI or not, the AI attitude didn't matter. But about the feedback type, what kind of AI feedback you want, what kind of feedback will be more impactful mattered for the AI attitudes. Okay? So here, this graph, the x-axis is AI attitude. So if you go right, then you have more positive general AI attitude. And then y-axis is probability of revision. And then blue line is the AI example. And the red line is AI score. And if you see, if you go right, there's more gap. There's more difference, right? So it means that if you are more favorable toward the AI in general, then you're gonna be more responsive to the specific example AI compared to just AI score, okay? So, and then also that appears in that simple effects analysis. So those who had low AI attitude, mean minus 1 SD, odds ratio was 6, and then it becomes twice for moderate AI attitude, and it becomes even twice for high AI attitude. Okay, there's a huge gap. So interpretation, AI favorable users more sensitive to feedback specificity. So they are the ones who really care about what kind of AI feedback is provided. Okay. And RQ1B was about the sentiment improvement. There was no moderation by the AI attitude. So the discussion of the study 3 is this. So generative AI was effective at showing the way how to do it because it show us really significant and really dramatic difference compared to just providing the AI score. So it provides actionable guidance, not just evaluation, and that motivated a lot of more people to revise further. But it addresses the I don't know how problem. And it strongly supports for FEAT and self-efficacy literature, specificity of the feedback matters. And AI as a moderator effect emerged. So AI favorable users may have higher expectation about AI. So they think that the AI is beneficial for our society. But because of that favorable attitude, they might expect more. When they just see the AI score, they might think that it's not enough. Okay? AI can do better. So maybe that kind of specific example AI is the one that meet their expectation, and that's how that came to more revision behaviors, okay? Greater acceptance. But I like to know some critical observations I made. So in the ChatGPT, the examples feedback, most revisers, about 80%, accepted the AI example as is without further editing, even though we gave that option. So what does it mean? Okay, it means that if we employ this kind of AI feedback system, the discussion quality may depend on the AI suggestions quality. Okay? So there's a trade-off that definitely more people revised and more people were responsive to AI when you provided actionable guidance. But then if you are just taking that actionable guidance provided by AI as is, not editing any further, it means that it's less thinking. Okay? Even though we give the control, people are rejecting the control, right? So we need that, the optimal balance. We need to find that optimal balance, how to approach this. Okay? So I would like to, again, summarize the integrated findings across these 3 studies. The study 1, we found that AI score feedback increases self-moderation behavior. It works regardless of AI attitudes. And study 2, we saw that benefits extend to observers. AI prompted revisions reduce the perceived conflict of the discussion. In third study, generative AI provides actionable guidance, it dramatically increases revision rates, and its effect stronger for AI favorable users. So for those kind of users, at first I thought that this would be the other way around. I thought that those who are unfavorable toward the AI would be just considering this AI example as too intrusive, okay, too controlling. I don't believe in AI, but AI is having too much control. It's ordering me around. I thought that would be the case. I thought those will be those ones who are more sensitive toward this AI feedback type effect. But actually, this was the other way around. Those who are more favorable toward the AI were more sensitive about the AI feedback type. So something to remember. So I'd like to conclude with the idea I have about how to approach this issue. So I see that AI as an encourager rather than an enforcer. So about the content moderation in online discussion to resolve the issue of hostile, aggressive online discussion, a lot of them are seeing AI as an enforcer, decision maker. They are the ones who decide what to ban, what not to appear, what to stay. But then I like to preserve the human agency. I think it matters more than now because AI is becoming more and more capable, and that we are becoming more reliant on it. But I think it's really important to find that balance to reserve our agency, reserve our autonomy, our control, while getting the help from the AI. Okay? So coming back to the original question, the title of this research talk, can we use AI MC to achieve better, more positive, civil, positive online discussion? I think our research results tell us that yes, we can. We can use AI to help us achieve better online discussion without losing our full control. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sue, for that fascinating talk. We have plenty of time for questions, so if you want to raise your hand, Yuatong has the microphone. It looks like, behind Ron, then Ron. Yeah. It would be good, yeah. Is it not on?
They turn it on from back here, don't they?
First of all, I think it's not on. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, great. Now it's on. Yeah. Thank you for the talk. It was really inspiring. Also, I'm studying AI, human AI interaction, so it was really good topic.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the one thing I was curious is that, like in your third study, people were really reliant on AI suggestion, right? And like I'm curious, like whether, and then you also mentioned that this AI quality might matter, and I wonder if the AI, generative AI, change their original stance or make the content less civil and more negative, then would they still willing to follow that advice, like without second thought?
So you mean that the generative AI suggestions quality might not be good? Maybe the reason why?
No. Like what I'm curious
Yeah.
is that like whether they would still, especially for those who have higher AI favorability, do you think that they just follow AI's advice or revision without second thought, so that even though the stance of their original post is different, or even that comment is more negative and less civil, do you think they will still follow it because AI changed it? So, or maybe they really wanted to have more negative stance, but like simply because AI is like giving me this advice, then okay, like why don't I just take that advice and become less moral on that topic?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in this particular study, we tried our best through a series of prompting to make sure that it's improving the sentiment, and then it's not changing the stance or position of the original author. But I think that's definitely a good question to explore further. The AI is trying to change the opinion, the stance, not just the tone. There could be an AI like that, right? And then although I because of the time limit, I didn't mention about the final trade-off between, the easier modification versus the less thinking. We can think about the self-persuasion process too. If you think about the self-persuasion process, if we post something online and then we become committed to it because we are the author of that idea, right? But then if an AI generative example provides a suggestion like that, if you take it just as is and it's being posted and being observed to the majority of the people out there, then whose idea is that, right? Are we actually going to experience a similar cognitive process like being committed to that idea, taking the ownership, and then self-persuading, reinforcing the attitudes? Or, we are just gonna take a stance that, okay, that's the AI, it's not my full idea, so that's not, it doesn't matter for my attitude. Are we going to see that? So I think that's definitely a very good question to explore further. Yes.
I was wondering whether you looked at the relationship between people's position on the issue and their response to either the AI's suggestion or sentiment, because both of the issues, at least in the last study that you showed, you would have a confound between conservative versus liberal perspectives and attitudes towards the issue. Both of the issues, immigration and gun control, are ones that people would either have, a conservative would have a negative attitude toward it, and a liberal would have a positive attitude toward it. So it's potentially possible that the cause for the increase in attention to the content versus sentiment was a function of whether or not somebody was conservative or liberal being confounded with whether or not they have favorable or unfavorable attitudes towards AI. Does that make sense?
Yes. So in our study, because we were very strictly focused on testing the AI effect, so we control all the other things, right? So issue attitudes or issue involvement. But I think it's definitely something to explore further, depending on the initial position on the issue, does that make someone more sensitive to the AI feedback or not? So yeah, we didn't investigate, analyze that, but definitely something to.
Right. I mean, it's not hard to imagine that somebody who had a conservative attitude versus somebody who had a liberal attitude might respond differently to sentiment versus content. I had one other very quick question. I imagine you probably have already thought about this. You have asked people to revise their messages after this feedback. Have you examined or considered examining not have people revise their feedback, but actually look at their feedback to a subsequent issue to see whether or not, because I don't know how often people actually revise their messages, but we know that people then post subsequent messages. And I was wondering whether or not you think that that type of feedback would, if it doesn't affect their response to the revision, if it would affect their response to another issue in another post.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question to test, because here this was like all testing the basic idea of AIMC being effective for this kind of situation. But you are talking about the longitudinal effect in a way that maybe someone who revised according to AI, or maybe who chose not to revise according to AI, they may have different reactions in further discussion on a similar issue, or not like that?
I'm not talking about revising, I'm just
Yeah.
talking about the feedback.
Oh, just
feedback affecting their subsequent messages instead of their decision to revise the one that they made.
Yeah, that's also great, because it's not just about the revision, but just by the fact that you are receiving the AI or not, right? That could make, yes.
My wife tells me that my communication is often inappropriate. And it's not just to get me to change what I just said to her, but it's to get me to change what she knows I'm going to say in the future.
Probably not the only person who says that.
Yes.
Yeah, in a way, I think that's definitely that AI feedback, especially the score, could make people become more self-conscious in a way, to be more aware of what they say on the discussion. Yes, thank you so much for the wonderful idea. I think that's something, the longitudinal effects should definitely be explored in further study. Yes.
This is really wonderful. Thank you for your great insights. I have a language question, not an AI question. So, what struck me as really interesting is understanding what revisions look like psychologically to people through words. And you have a lot of really cool data in the first two studies that I know you mentioned would be really awesome for future work. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on like what you might expect, right? What is the revision? What does it look like to revise something psychologically through language patterns? I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or intuitions on that.
Yes, that's a very good question. So in the first two studies, so that was done in Korean, right? So I thought doing that, linguistic analysis, maybe what kind of strategies they took to revise, what kind of like a mental process we could observe by looking at the language patterns in that revised comments. Definitely that would be something interesting to see and look at and report. But unfortunately in Korean language, I couldn't find at the time a really reliable analysis method to look into that matter as just in English language. There's a lot of tools for English. That's another reason why I conducted the third study, because I wanted to use those tools to look into that linguistic pattern. But unfortunately, a lot of the people who revised just took the ChatGPT suggestion. So that took out that opportunity to explore further the linguistic pattern, because most of them were generated by AI. But I think maybe this is another time to look into the tools for Korean language. If there's any development on that, I will definitely look into those linguistic patterns. But thank you so much.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. Firstly, thank you so much for your insightful study to sharing that. And my question could be a little detailed. So I just wonder about the third study, and how did you engineer the prompt for the ChatGPT to generate the revision? So I mean that even if the revision can make some changes, if you prompt the models to generate revision as making more civil, making more less hostile, that prompt example makes some changes. So I just want to know how you design that prompt.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that prompting was done by students, amazing students, who went through a lot of revision process. I looked at the prompt and I looked at the results, and then, okay, I thought that this one's the best, right? So that's what I did. But then their prompting was very extensive. So it's just not just one sentence, just make it more civil or polite. They gave a huge bunch of examples, so multiple stage prompting. So this is if you change this kind of tone or position, this is not good, this is not acceptable. So try to maintain this kind of just like this example, try to maintain the original author's position. Do not change it, just to make it more positive like this, or positive in tone, more polite, like that. So that's what I did. But if you're more curious about the actual prompt we use, you can email me and I can send it to you.
So I guess I have a related question. Maria.
Oh.
Yeah, we can, I just want you to have it. Yeah, I can, because we're recording it, so I want to make sure.
We want your words.
Thank you. So I have two questions, actually. One is about the prompting and when that kind of prompt might be ego-threatening. I guess I'm thinking about the ego-defensive stuff from the functional approach back in the day. And oftentimes this is with a topic that's counter-attitudinal and that we're highly involved in. And so I wondered if you could speak to that issue a little bit and how you see that play out in your work. Mm-hmm. And then a kind of related question is about attitude strength in this case and what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you so much. So about the first, the ego-threatening situation. So I think that's definitely a very good question. And that's, if you remember the feedback intervention theory, it clearly tells us that, okay, by providing, very specific feedback about this is the scale you are being evaluated and this is your current performance, it can direct people's attention not to the self, but to the task. So I think, our results kind of support that idea. yeah, it's consistent. But still, I thought that, especially for the AI example situation, that this is the right way to do, right? It's showing that guidance, this is the example to follow in a way. So maybe that could be more ego-threatening, I thought. So although I didn't explain everything we did today, but we measured negative faith threats for the, for the two types of feedback types. There was no difference. So that was quite good, because I thought that, okay, and there was no moderation by the favorable and favorable of existing AI favorability. So it means that, okay, people are not taking this kind of AI example feedback as too intrusive or too ego-threatening. So yeah. And about the AI, not the AI, or was it the general attitude strength?
General attitude strength. How it should play into this model.
Yeah, although I control for the effect of it, I think, now that Ron also mentioned about the attitude being played out differently in this kind of context, I think it's definitely something to look at, because in a way, I think that people who have really strong attitudes, they might become more sensitive to the feedback, right? So I have this very crystallized, very strong attitudes. I know I'm right, but then what you are telling me is that I need to change something in my message, and I don't like that, right? So I think something, we can see the interaction. I think I need to test that out, whether any kind of the issue strength or issue involvement or issue attitude matters here for this feedback type effect. Thank you so much. Yes. Hello.
Really enjoyed the talk, really enjoyed the research. I have a couple questions I could ask, but I'm just going to focus on one, and it's from study 3 specifically. When you look at the initial post and ultimately the generative AI, the post that was generated by ChatGPT, I mean, I couldn't help but notice that if I'd seen that as a third-party observer, I would have said, huh? Right? Like really? Like, it's not something that you would expect that you would encounter in the context of the comment sections on these types of posts. And so I was kind of wondering, what are the potential implications of that? Do you have plans to look at third-party observer effects with that type of content? And then maybe just more broadly, what are the ramifications of having generative AI arguing on our behalf in terms of kind of pulling us out of the equation to some extent?
Yeah, that's definitely something I worry, especially after looking at the study 3 results. I gave people control. They just rejected it. A lot of people rejected it. I think part of the reason maybe because the framing I did with the AI, generative AI suggestion, that are you willing to take this AI suggestion? Maybe if I frame the question differently, maybe people engage more voluntary, further editing based off of the AI suggestion. So maybe that's something to explore. But about the third-party observers, especially for the third study, that now that people are just taking the AI's message as their own message and post it, and maybe third-party observers see that and then know that, okay, this is definitely not human-generated, this is AI-generated, and then this discussion is being fake, and then I don't believe any of it. Maybe we could see that kind of effect, and I think that would be super interesting. Yeah, but it's something to explore. Thank you for the idea.
Oh, thank you for the talk. I really enjoyed that. That's very wonderful. And the question I have is that, do you think, I'm curious about the instructions of the stimulus, because I'm thinking about the context of the online discussion. Suppose we are discuss on the Facebook or the Instagram, we want to use that AI-mediated tool to improve our comment because we care about other people's feelings. We want to manage our impression from the friends. But suppose if we were in the online, like for example, there were a lot of haters on toxic communities on Reddit. If in that kind of discussion, people don't care about other feelings, I just want to do some bad things, leave some bad comments, does AI-mediated communication works in that context? Have you the context or anything specific in the instructions about it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That is exactly the situation I had in mind about this project. So, it's an anonymous online discussion forum. People talk about very conflictual issue. So can AIMC can it do anything to improve the situation? That is the focal question I wanted to address throughout this talk. But like you said, especially the first study, because of the IRB situation, I couldn't include a lot of vulgar language or super negative hate expressions in there. But in the third study, we actually created different versions of it. So there was some high tension situation, there was low tension situation, and then I didn't show you the full data based on that, but there was no moderating effect of that high tension or versus low tension. It means that even with the super conflictual, high tension, with a lot of negative language discussion, the AIMC works in a similar way compared to the low tension situation. So, but I think that's a very good question, yeah.
Thanks. Really wonderful talk. It's nice to see a really programmatic series of studies that has been done. I had a question about the third study and something you and Dave were kind of talking about, and then you mentioned it again. How aware were the participants that if they did edit or say, yes, I want to pick and change my original message, that they had the opportunity to edit what ChatGPT said? Because it looked like from the screen that you showed earlier, it was like, no, I don't want to change it, or yes, I do want to change it. But it wasn't necessarily clear to me when I was looking at that would mean, oh, I can change my message, but then I can further change it and I don't have to just pick what ChatGPT said. Because it sounded like earlier you said when people did decide to change it, they were just sticking with whatever ChatGPT said. So I'm wondering if there's maybe you have a restriction effect there, right? And maybe more people would have been willing to change if they had been aware that I can also then further edit what ChatGPT has suggested.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the stimulus, it was pretty small, all the words, and but then right after the box, they can put in their comments. There was some additional message saying that you can further edit the ChatGPT suggestion. So for the original, the feedback, they also saw the same message, and then when they edited the message, they saw the message. So they were aware of the opportunity, just didn't take it. Yeah.
Someone else before me? Okay. You talked about people focusing on the task. I'm wondering how you define the task, because the task can mean something very different for different people. And this is something I was going to say before Maria started to bring in these egoistic needs. From a functional perspective, have you tried to look at what people's goals were with their initial posts and how that might influence their likelihood to be altered by the AI feedback?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I actually measure that, the people's motivation of engaging and writing their comment. I measure two things. The first being that, are you trying to persuade other people to believe in your stance? Or the motivation for clarity. Are you trying to be clear about what you say? But I didn't see any impact on that, so I didn't investigate further. But I think, maybe my measurement was quite not good, because I wanted to measure before this happening. Then maybe we could see some moderating effect. And then maybe their goal was more specified, and we can see the differential effect based on that. But then I measured after this discussion being happened, so they could be affected by the AI feedback, what kind of things they received. So I didn't use that item, but.
The reason I bring it up is that most of the posts were expressing attitudes, right? And when we think of Schwartz's value expressive functions, that's the goal. It's to express, my inner core beliefs. And I'm wondering how the extent to which somebody's goal is to express their inner core beliefs would interact with the AI suggestion. Because if you talk about what's functional, well, here's a better way to express your belief is very different than here's a better way to persuade somebody else, which is very different than here's a better way to be civil. So I'm just curious about how AI might interact with those differences.
Yeah, thank you so much. I totally see the benefit of looking into the goals people have for this kind of discussion behavior and then how that could affect the impact of the AI feedback. So thank you so much for the wonderful idea.
Yeah, thank you. It's me again. Yeah, so yeah, I just gotten curious after Ron talked about this. Maybe the topics are related to like certain political issues. So I just want to have a second question about that. So do you think which AI tool provide the revision would affect their decision to take that advice or not? For example, certain AI tools are considered being liberal, and the other AI tool I won't mention which one is it because I might go to Mars. but yeah, certain AI tools are kind of considered more conservative. Do you think like those use of different AI tool and then people knowing that which AI tool they were provided the revision with would affect the revision?
Yeah, that's a good question. So now there are so many different AI tools available, and people have some idea this AI being more free and liberal, this AI being more restrictive, and then trying to be polite all the time. So they have different expectations about AI tools. So they might play a role here. So that's why we wanted to kind of frame all the AI tools just as being AI. Not saying anything about this being from Google, this from being ChatGPT. We didn't say anything like that because we wanted to exclude that kind of the source effect. But I think it's definitely something to explore now that we have more tools available, and then we can use maybe different people's different source expectation play a role into this kind of process. So thank you.
Hi, it's me again as well. I'm going to channel Maria with this last question, in a good way, hopefully. So the study 3 finding that really stood out to me was like the 82% of people just sort of went with whatever was AI suggested. I'm wondering about how to maximize variance with that. I wonder if you can play with norms and expectations around 17% of participants in our study tend to take up the AI recommendation versus 87% of people tend to take up the AI recommendation. I wonder if you were to manipulate the perceived norm of uptake of that, how that would actually impact some of these things and what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, so you're talking about setting a norm, right? Yeah, so what if we can have additional kind of message saying that, okay, this AI suggestion, the revision suggestion has been accepted by this majority of the users in this discussion forum.
In general, 17%
Yeah.
of people tend to take up AI recommendations.
Yeah, I think that's definitely doable, and at the same time, very could be very beneficial to improve further the impact of the AI. If we set the higher if we show the higher norm, the social norm in a way, of majority users taking this advice versus, very low social norm. I wouldn't say it's a norm in a way, but the social expectation that a lot of people are not following the AI norm. But then maybe people start to ask question, okay, maybe this AI suggestion is not very reliable because not many people are listening to it, and that could definitely play a role into this feedback effect, I think. So yeah, thank you so much for the future research idea. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Shin. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
That was a great talk. I wonder if you explored any age differences, because the number of 82% that was striking to me as well. Did you see any differences between younger or older participants? Because maybe if you're younger, you may be more likely to accept AI changes, rather than if you have like a more established of experience and how to deal with online discussion or not.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think definitely the AI literacy in a way matters, especially that might that could be corresponding to the age level of the users. So people who have low AI literacy or think this AI technology being really novel and superpowered may be more responsive to that AI feedback than other users who have low AI literacy and thing. So I didn't look at the interaction between the different age level of these feedback effects, but something definitely that could be explored with the data set. So thank you for the suggestion.
Maybe one more question. Great, perfect.
Hello. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. I'm curious about, like, I really want to be a participant, but now I know the, the research.
Maybe for the next study, yeah.
I'm curious about how the AI would, like, what would be a good critique or good feedback that is scored as high for, from the AI? And if there's like some slangs in the feedback, like the sixth floor is a clown, and the clown is used as an emoji. Would the AI know what that means? And is there any like instructions that you ask them to not put in emoji in the feedbacks or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's why before doing this whole project, we tested different AI models and then try to see, for Korean language, which works best. In other words, it means that which tools provided the sentiment score results, which our lab members, humans, could align most, right? So we thought that the Google NLP works best in that aspect, so we chose that. Even better for the Korean-specific AI, which was surprising to us. So in that, the Google, we tested the emoticons and different kind of language. So in general, it aligned which I can say. So if the slang is included, but if it's not like hateful or super negative, it could still be interpreted as being neutral or positive. But if it includes, even though there's no vulgar words or slangs or like that, but if it really is strong and negative emotion, then it could be categorized as negative, containing the negative emotion. So it's about the general tone. So we still wanted to kind of use the best AI tool available when we conducted this study, but what we more focused on is whether there's any difference between the AI feedback versus not in the first study. So, and we saw that AI feedback system. So maybe for the better AI tool, maybe we could even improve the results. And then additional thing to note is that after taking the results, responses from the respondents, we manually took a look at all the sentiment analysis done by the Google NL. And then we saw that, if there's any kind of huge discrepancy, humans cannot agree with this kind of the score, given the comment content, then we removed. So, we took a little bit of manual editing for our results. So that's something too. Yeah. No, thanks.
Prohibited from the protocol? Like,
no, not. No,
so
yeah, we wanted to,
everything.
Yeah, give all the freedom to the users.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all the questions. Thank you. Let's give Dr. Sue, let's give Sue a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, so the next move for our group is to go to the Deeb conference room, which is room 191 for lunch. That's a different place than we usually go, so I want to make sure everybody, goes there. I think that the food is going to be set out in the main lobby outside so we can sit and chat. We'll be back in this room at 1:30 for Dr. Grizzard's talk, so make sure you are back in your seats to hear another wonderful talk. What's that? 1:30 is the next talk. Yep. Thank you all. Thank you.